everyone, welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. U.S. President Donald Trump says IAEA inspectors will be allowed in Iran at the appropriate time, rejecting Tehran's claims that it had not agreed to inspections. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio warned that no country is allowed to impose tolls on the Strait of Hormuz, as he began a tour of Gulf nations. Stocks fell on Wall Street as a sell-off in semiconductor shares dragged the major indexes to their lowest levels in more than a week. This comes amid mounting concerns over debt-funded spending on artificial intelligence and the prospect of a more hawkish U.S. Federal Reserve. South Korea's Prime Minister Kim Min-seok, who's on a 3-day visit to China, called on Beijing to play a constructive role in helping create conditions for inter-Korean talks and dialogue between North Korea and China, as he held talks with Chinese Premier Li Qiang. The United States says Iran will allow international nuclear inspectors back into the country. This comes after Iran denied that it had agreed to IAEA inspections. Our An Sung-jin starts us off.
U.S. President Donald Trump has reaffirmed that inspectors from the International Atomic Energy Agency would be allowed to inspect Iran's nuclear facilities at what he called an appropriate time. Speaking to reporters after landing in Pennsylvania on Tuesday local time, Trump said Iran was wrong to claim there were no plans for IAEA inspections, dismissing Tehran's denial that it had agreed to inspections.
They know they're wrong. They told us inside, and we have it down 100% inspections. And if they were right, I'd cancel the meetings right now.
The issue of IAEA inspections could threaten ongoing working-level negotiations between Washington and Tehran. Trump's claims came after U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance said earlier this week that Iran had agreed to invite IAEA inspectors back and that inspection activities could begin later this week. However, Iran maintains that it has not accepted any new nuclear obligations. The Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson denied reports that Tehran had agreed to inspections of nuclear sites previously targeted by U.S. airstrikes, saying any decision on resuming inspections would depend on the outcome of future ceasefire negotiations. On the same day, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that Iran would not be able to charge tolls in the Strait of Hormuz as part of any final agreement with the U.S.
No country is allowed to charge tolls or fees on an international waterway. That's existing international law.
Rubio is in the United Arab Emirates to meet with officials from the Gulf Cooperation Council and visit countries in the region, including Kuwait and Bahrain. This comes as Iran and Oman released a joint statement which stated that the two countries were reviewing charges for navigation and shipping services in the Strait of Hormuz after the end of the 60-day ceasefire MOU period. These fees could increase costs for Gulf states along the Persian Gulf that depend on the waterway for oil exports. Meanwhile, international oil prices fell on Tuesday to their lowest since February, amid signs that crude shipments through the Strait of Hormuz were recovering. Though damage to port infrastructure could delay a full recovery, markets are closely watching how quickly oil flows can return to normal. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
And South Korea's President Lee Jae-myung has urged the government to stay on high alert despite the U.S. Iran ceasefire, maintaining emergency response measures and reviewing an extension of fuel price caps and tax breaks. Our Blue House correspondent Song Yoo-jin reports.
With the United States and Iran yet to reach a final agreement to end the war, President Lee Jae-myung has once again urged his cabinet to stay on high alert.
끝까지 긴장의 끈을 놓지 말고 비상체제를 유지하고 민생 경제 회복에 박차를 가해 주시기 바랍니다.
Chairing a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, Lee proposed extending the government's fuel price caps and fuel tax cuts, citing high oil prices and inflationary pressure. Korea introduced price ceilings on petroleum products in March for the first time in 3 decades. Fuel tax cuts remain in place through July, with the tax cut set at 15% for gasoline and 25% for diesel.
반도체나 이런 데 초과세수들이 좀 예상이 되고 그러면은 유류세를 좀 낮춰도 재정 부담은 그렇게 크지는 않고 그러면 좀 더 과감하게 석유 최고 가격제는 더 유지하고 좀 최고 가격도 좀 낮춰가야 될 거 아니에요?
Refiners are currently prohibited from selling gasoline above 1,934 won per liter, roughly $1.26, and diesel above 1,923 won, or $1.25. Looking beyond the immediate crisis, Yi said the war in the Middle East has exposed structural vulnerabilities in Korea's economy.
에너지와 원자재 공급망의 전략적인 다변화, 그리고 재생에너지 중심의 에너지 믹스, 탈플라스틱 순환 경제로의 이행을 서둘러야겠습니다.
The Foreign Ministry says it will strengthen supply chain cooperation with resource-rich regions outside the Middle East, such as Latin America and Central Asia. Meanwhile, the Finance, Industry, and Climate Ministries are reviewing measures to accelerate investment in solar power, wind energy, batteries, and electric vehicles. The president called on officials to work with greater precision, speed, and initiative to turn these goals into reality. He reiterated that the way public officials carry out their duties directly affects the lives of the people. 송유진, Arirang News.
Wall Street saw share prices tumble on Tuesday as a sharp sell-off in semiconductor stocks sent the Nasdaq and S&P 500 to their lowest levels in more than a week. Investors grew increasingly concerned about mounting debt-funded AI spending and the prospect of a more hawkish Federal Reserve. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. stocks closed sharply lower on Tuesday, with the Nasdaq and S&P 500 falling to their lowest levels in more than a week as a sell-off in semiconductor shares rattled investors. By the closing bell, the Dow Jones Industrial Average slipped 0.09%, while the S&P 500 fell 1.44%, and the Nasdaq dropped 2.21%. The Philadelphia Semiconductor Index plunged nearly 8%, while the S&P 500's technology sector dropped 3.7%. Major chip and AI-related stocks led the decline. Nvidia fell more than 4%. Alphabet lost 1%, and chip makers including Intel, Marvell Technology, and AMD dropped between nearly 6 and 9%. Investors are increasingly questioning the sustainability of massive AI-related spending, particularly as major technology companies continue to raise debt to finance data centers and infrastructure projects. SpaceX, which recently entered the public market, has also tapped the bond market to raise capital. Its shares managed to rise 1% after 3 straight days of losses. Meanwhile, memory chip makers Micron Technology and SanDisk, two of the market's strongest performers this year, each plunged about 13%. Investors are closely watching Micron's earnings report due Wednesday for clues about the outlook for memory chips and the broader AI sector following this year's powerful rally. South Korean stocks tumbled nearly 10% on Tuesday as foreign investors sold major technology shares. Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix both fell over 12%, reflecting growing concerns over the semiconductor sector and the future pace of AI-driven growth. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Here in Korea, labor and management began a fierce tug-of-war over next year's minimum wage on Tuesday, with labor representatives seeking an increase of more than 16% and management representatives pushing for a wage freeze. For more on this, we're joined today by Dr. Kim Jun-mo, professor at the Department of Public Administration at Congo University. Professor Kim, thanks for coming on today.
My pleasure.
So this wide gap between labor and management is expected to make negotiations very challenging. How do you view the demand from both sides, and what impact could the final decision have on employment and the overall Korean economy?
The two hot issues on the table have been, first, whether we can have sectoral difference in the minimum wage, and second, how steep can we increase minimum wage? The first issue did not get consensus at previous sessions, so last night's session was on the increased rate. Labor side claimed 12,000 hourly wage level while business side showed about 10,301 level. So there was huge difference. And since they didn't get the settlement, future sessions will reach the settlement anyway. And when the settlement is made, the minimum wage level will be higher than the existing level. So as an aftermath, small business owners, low profitable service sectors and firms will be quite cautious in hiring. And as a secular trend, they may introduce more machines at an increased velocity. So the fundamental issue is how we can boost the productivity level of the Korean economy itself so that minimum wage discussion will be less burdensome.
Right, and the EU administration has been working to tackle inflation. So how should the government balance its goal of raising workers' incomes with its commitment to stabilizing prices?
In general, increasing minimum wage complicate the inflation control, but there are bigger triggers of inflation, namely international wars and supply chain issues, U.S. interest rate hikes, domestic investment and productivity growth issues, domestic money supply and fiscal policy. All these factors are big triggers of inflation. So taking this as a backdrop, because we had minimum wage issue for some time, so this is not a direct hurdle. Rather, the increased speed, the speed of increase in relation to other economic factors would be critical.
I see. And how does South Korea's minimum wage compare with other major economies?
In fact, Korea's minimum wage level is not that low. Economists use a ratio of minimum wage to median wage and taking about 60% as upper limit guideline. So in this figure, G7 country average is like 49%, while Korea's figure is already at 60% level. So it's not that low. And if you look at the real tax rate for this income bracket, Korea has 11%, comparable to 14% of France, much lower than that of Germany that has 30%. If labor side argument of 12,000 won minimum wage rate had been accepted last night, it could translate into 2.5 million monthly wage, and that can be converted to nearly 20,000 US dollars, reflecting foreign exchange rate right now. So it is higher than that of Germany, Japan, and Canada, lower than UK and France. So our level is never low at this moment. So the conclusion is how to boost and maintain and sustain the productivity level of Korea. That will be the key issue.
Right. And meanwhile, political debate continues over raising the retirement age with labor unions increasing pressure on the government and the ruling party to move forward with legislation. How do you view this debate?
It's a hot potato, not only raising the retirement age, but also offering more job opportunities to younger generation, 2030 people, is urgent. One interesting observation is that raising retirement age has a strong labor union backups, while the younger generation issue is not concerned or less strong backups by labor union. But from government's point of view, it's critical to have fine balance between the two against the tides of technological change, because in the labor market, we have new phenomenon such as platform workers who are not well protected. We have very short-term employment practices, and the technology itself is becoming obsolete. For example, coding capability was believed to guarantee one's lifetime job opportunities until a few years ago, but it is no longer the truth. So it's a quite interesting observation to see how government can handle this issue and making a fine balance between the two.
Right. We'll have to see how that goes. All right, Professor Kim, thank you so much for coming on today. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
South Korean Prime Minister Kim Min-seok held talks with Chinese Premier Li Chang in Dalian on Tuesday as part of his three-day visit to China. The two discussed ways to deepen Seoul and Beijing's strategic cooperative partnership across politics, the economy, culture, and people-to-people exchanges. Kim expressed hope that China would play a constructive role in helping create conditions for inter-Korean and North Korea-U.S. dialogue, with both sides agreeing on the importance of working together to maintain regional peace and stability. Kim and Lee also shared the view that high-level exchanges should continue, including on the sidelines of the APEC leaders meeting in Shenzhen this November. This marked the first prime minister-level meeting between the two countries since 2019. On Wednesday, Kim is scheduled to deliver a special address at the Summer Davos Forum in Dalian. North Korea says it has officially commissioned its new 5,000-ton destroyer, the Choe Hyon, in what Pyongyang says is a major step forward for its naval modernization efforts. According to the Korean Central News Agency on Wednesday, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un attended the commissioning ceremony at Nampo Port the day before. Kim praised the vessel's performance, saying it demonstrated advanced and integrated combat capabilities, and claimed the North Korean Navy is being transformed from what was once considered the military's weakest branch into a much more powerful force. He also stressed that the expansion of naval power is a key part of North Korea's broader efforts to strengthen its nuclear deterrent and military readiness. And staying in North Korea, during a key ruling party meeting, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un reaffirmed his commitment to strengthening the regime's nuclear arsenal while stepping up criticism of South Korea and overseeing a major reshuffle of senior party officials. Our Kim Bo-kyung reports.
North Korea has once again reaffirmed its commitment to expanding its nuclear arsenal. According to the Korean Central News Agency on Tuesday, the ruling Workers' Party of Korea convened the second plenary meeting of the Central Committee for 3 days on June 20th to review the progress of decisions made at the 9th Party Congress in February. Presided over by leader Kim Jong-un, the meeting emphasized the regime's commitment to expanding and strengthening its nuclear forces and fully exercise its self-given status as a nuclear-armed state. Kim further ordered an increase in powerful defense assets without pause, with a goal of dominating the world, and to proceed with the construction of a 10,000-ton strategic guided missile cruiser. On foreign affairs policy, the North again labeled the South as its most hostile state and criticized this month's South Korea-U.S. Nuclear Consultative Group meeting, claiming the allies are expanding their military capabilities, including through Seoul's pursuit of nuclear-powered submarines. Regarding the plenary meeting, a Unification Ministry official noted that an unusually large share was devoted to national defense and foreign affairs. An expert agrees, adding that while the message towards South Korea remains in line with the two-state policy, its hostility has intensified. He attributed this to the war in the Middle East.
Unlike everywhere else, North Korea feels an exceptionally high level of security threat. So the need to justify strengthening its military capabilities by pointing to external threats is growing.
Meanwhile, there was a major leadership reshuffle, with Cho Yong-won elected secretary of the party's Central Committee while removing Kim Jae-ryong. The same expert explained this reshuffle is to root out corruption.
It appears that the party felt the need to strengthen its control over the military by raising early awareness of the level of corruption within the armed forces.
The meeting also highlighted coal as a strategic sector, calling for a nationwide overhaul of mining communities for broader economic development plans. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Choe Hyon, and this is The World Now. In France, 40 people have drowned over the past few days while trying to cool off from the punishing heat wave affecting much of Europe. French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu said on Tuesday that most of those who drowned were young people who had gone into rivers or canals to escape the heat. The country logged its hottest day on record on Tuesday, with one southwestern town hitting 44.3 degrees Celsius, and red alerts now cover more than half of France. Paris closed the Eiffel Tower early, and operators shut a nuclear plant after the river meant to cool it grew too warm. Authorities in Italy raised their top warning across 15 cities, and forecasters in Britain expected a possible June high. The United States has supplied doses of an experimental antibody drug for clinical trials against the worsening Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo. This comes as a reversal from its earlier stance of reserving the treatment for Americans only. The drug, made by San Diego-based MAP Biopharmaceutical, will be tested both on its own and alongside a Gilead antiviral widely used during the pandemic. There are no approved vaccines or treatments for the Bundibugyo strain, which has infected more than 1,000 people and killed over 250. Trials are due to begin within weeks. Through running them in a conflict zone with frequent attacks on health workers will be difficult. In Nigeria, gunmen killed at least 20 people in a farming community in central Nigeria's Plateau state in the latest burst of violence to hit a region scarred by years of communal bloodshed. Police said Monday the assailants stormed a settlement in the Bakos area on Sunday before police traded fire with them and drove them off. 18 victims were killed during the attack, and 2 others died later in the hospital. The state's police chief has sent extra tactical units to the area. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack. The U.S. Department of Justice announced charges against 455 people on Tuesday over healthcare fraud worth more than $6.5 billion. Reaching across 41 states and naming 90 medical professionals, the DOJ described it as the biggest joint federal and state crackdown in U.S. history. Among those charged was a Los Angeles hospice owner accused of signing up people who were not dying and billing Medicare for patients who were already dead, claiming nearly $28 million. Investigators recovered more than $127 million in cash, high-end cars, and jewelry. The DOJ also struck new data-sharing deals that let prosecutors tap machine learning systems to flag suspicious billing sooner.
While the west enjoys warm summer sunshine, the south and east remain under gray skies with some rain of 5 to 10 millimeters in the forecast. However, Busan and Ulsan will see heavier showers with up to 30 millimeters. But central regions will be under sunnier skies with strong UV rays this afternoon. It's not going to be as sunny as yesterday, but you'll still need some protection. The capital area looks like it's going to be the hottest place at a high of 30 degrees Celsius here in the capital, but the east coast will be much breezier, getting up to 23 degrees in Daegu, Gyeongju, and Busan. Conditions will become more active tomorrow with strong afternoon showers and thunderstorms in many regions.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.